What's the worst drug experience you've ever had? Subscribe for more. Story 1. I was 19, in college, and tripping on mushrooms for the second time ever. There were 4 of us in my dorm and we all took them together. But we forgot to set rules, the most important one being stay together. 30 minutes in, we all went our separate ways. That's when the trip hit me, and I started hallucinating that every single person I walked past was a cop. I have zero memory of people's reactions, but apparently, every time I passed someone, I instinctively put my hands behind my back like I was getting arrested. At some point, I wandered off campus and somehow convinced myself that walking through the most dangerous part of town was a great idea. It was Friday night. The crime rate was insane. But mushrooms gave me this false sense of invulnerability, so I just kept going. Eventually, I found myself in a really shady neighborhood, but instead of feeling uneasy, I saw people outside just hanging out, having a good time. So, naturally, I walked right up to a group of strangers chilling in their front yard. The first words out of their mouths? "The fuck you doing here?" Without missing a beat, I told them I was being chased by cops, that they were everywhere. Someone just looked at me and went, "Boy, you trippin'." They knew immediately I was on something. Then they asked where I came from. When I told them I was a college student, they burst out laughing. I had no idea why. But instead of messing with me, one of them just asked, "How you getting back?" I said I was going to walk. They laughed even harder. "We'll give you a ride. Nothing good is going to happen for you walking home right now." Next thing I know, I'm in their car, they're passing me a blunt, and they're cracking up at the fact that this random white dude is tripping balls in their back seat. But true to their word, they dropped me off safely and just said, "Don't do drugs alone, man." Then they drove off. I wish I could thank those guys. I don't remember where I was, but I remember that moment. Could have gone really bad, but instead, it was a wild story and an unexpected act of kindness. Also, it was the last time I ever did mushrooms. Turns out, I don't like the idea of not being in control of my actions. Story 2, I was tripping on LSD and somehow ended up at a 7-Eleven, which, in hindsight, was already a terrible idea. I'm standing there, staring way too hard at the hot dog roller, completely mesmerized by the way the sausages are spinning in perfect synchronization. That's when I feel it. Someone's staring at me. I turn my head way too slowly, and there he is, a crackhead. Wild-eyed, twitchy, clearly having a whole different kind of trip than I was. And for absolutely no reason, he immediately decides he wants to fight me. He gets in my face, talking absolute nonsense, but all I can focus on is how his words are melting out of his mouth like a Salvador Dali painting. I try to respond, but I have no idea what I even said. It was probably something like, "The hot dogs are dancing," which, unsurprisingly, pisses him off more. Now he's pacing back and forth, shadowboxing ghosts, and I'm just standing there, still trying to comprehend how time works. At some point, the cashier, who has definitely seen some shit in his life, just sighs and tells him to leave. The crackhead glares at me one last time, mutters something about me working for the government, and then runs full speed out of the store. I stood there for a long time before realizing I never even bought anything. Story 3. Tripping on mushrooms is one thing. Getting caught with mushrooms by the police while you're actively tripping on mushrooms? That's a whole different level of bad. I don't even remember why I had them on me. All I know is I was deep in it, walls breathing, trees whispering, the whole deal, when suddenly, red and blue lights flash behind me. My brain immediately malfunctions. The cop walks up to my window and I'm trying way too hard to act normal, which of course makes me look insanely suspicious. He asks for my license and registration, and I swear it takes me a full minute just to process what those words mean. Then he asks, "Have you been drinking?" I panic and blurt out, "No, just mushrooms." Silence. It takes me a second to realize what just came out of my mouth. The cop just stares at me, probably wondering if he actually heard that correctly. At this point, my brain is fighting for its life, trying to come up with something to say. But all that comes out is, like, in a cooking way. More silence. Somehow, someway, the cop just sighs, hands my license back, and tells me to drive safe. I nod, say, "You too," which doesn't even make sense. and drive away, still trying to comprehend how I didn't end up in jail. Someone replied, one time I was ripping very hard with a group of friends. Some of us were getting loud, too loud. Ground floor apartment, late at night. The fear set in. I was convinced the cops would show up, and I could not handle that. So I pulled my sober buddy aside, looked him dead in the eye and said, "Buddy, you are the man of this situation right now. I need you to make sure we're behaving. I cannot possibly deal with the police. I need you to make sure I am safe." He just stared at me like I had lost my damn mind. And honestly, I had. Story 4. Salvia made me lose my shit for about 15 minutes. Didn't feel like anything was real for about 3 hours. Someone replied, "Have a crazy story relating to this. One time I ran out of weed. Not legal where I'm from, so I knew I'd have to wait a few days. No big deal. But work was brutal that day. I just wanted to unwind. I check my stash, fully aware I'm out, but hoping, praying that I forgot about a stray bud somewhere. And then, jackpot. A little bag of chopped up something. Sweet. Prepped it for later and must have forgotten about it. I pack a cone, light up, take it all in, and before I can even put the bong down, the room starts spinning. Instant realization. That wasn't weed. That was fucking salvia. Turns out I stashed it there after trying it last time and hating it. And now I was stuck on the ride again. Meanwhile, I had just told my friend I'd be on Discord in 5 minutes to play a game. By the time I returned to reality and logged in, he was like, "Dude, where the fuck were you?" I just said, "In a different reality." Then I explained what happened. Fucking salvia. I threw that shit out for good. Story 5. Got high, chilling at home. Then, rustling in the attic. I freeze. My heart is pounding. What the hell is up there? Roommates get home, I tell them. They hear nothing. Now I'm spiraling. Am I losing my mind? Full-on psychotic break? Is this how it starts? A week later, we're all having dinner. The noise is back. We all stop. Look at each other. Silence. Then, more rustling. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't my brain breaking. It was a raccoon. Story 6. When I was 18, I got coerced into selling meth, then using it. 10 months later, I got busted. Ruined my first love senior prom. Lost everything. Got back up. Thought I was in the clear. Lost it all again within a year. Now, 5 years sober, never looking back. If someone ever tries to bring meth into your life, cut them out. No second chances. They are poisoning you. Story 7. Ran away to Glasgow after relapsing on booze. 14 months down the drain. Tried to score heroin, but met a guy who said he didn't want to be responsible for injecting me. He offered me rock instead. Went to his place. His girlfriend was jealous at first, but then we all just ended up smoking loads of crack. Spent 360 pounds in one night. Their friend stole some of my crack. Grrr. I gave my jacket to the guy's girlfriend, thinking I could sell it for more crack. She just kept it. By morning, I ran. Thank God my friend was home. She bought me a bus ticket back. Stayed clean for 9 months. Relapsed on crack this January 13th. But now, I got my 1-month keyring. And I'm moving forward. Story 8. Smoked weed in college, and every time I smoked too much, I'd constantly feel like I was pissing down my leg. Had to keep going to the bathroom to check. Someone replied, "Okay, I always wondered if I was the only person to experience this." Story 9. Smoked a joint, not realizing it was synthetic weed. Made me feel like I had a hole in my head. Worst high ever. Never again. Story 10. Took shrooms after my mom died. Night ended in lots of tears and sad friends. Not the trip I was hoping for. Story 11. I consider myself experienced in the realm of THC. Ate an edible that looked like a little radioactive pickle. It was so fucking strong, I thought we got dosed with acid. I actually got scared, and my heart arrhythmia was going off. I like being mildly stoned, not tripping ass and balls. Story 12. I was relying heavily on marijuana to cope with reality. After some years of this, my tolerance got to the point where I couldn't get high anymore. I tried desperately, but it wouldn't get rid of the crippling anxiety and depression. One day, I ate a bag of mushrooms I had lying around. I'm not sure of the quantity, but it was probably around 1/8 to 1/4 of an ounce. Still no relief. After alternating between pacing in my room and lying down, trying to control my breathing, I was struck by the absolute certainty that I must die. I wasn't hallucinating. I took a pocket knife to the backyard and sliced my wrists vertically, repeatedly. After about 10 cuts, none were deep enough to achieve my goal, so I threw the knife into the pool. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the first sharp knife I found, a serrated steak knife. I went back outside and began ripping my throat open from ear to ear. I felt my windpipe and tried to cut it, but didn't get through all the way. I tried stabbing into my temple a few times, but didn't get deep. I placed the knife in my eye socket and slammed it into a fence post in an attempt to lobotomize myself, but I hit bone. I was outside for about 2 hours, begging for death. Eventually, I gave up the knife and tried ripping at the exposed tissue in my neck with my fingers. At some point, I realized I might as well go get help, so I called 911. I spent 7 days in the hospital recovering from my injuries. I spent 62 days in a behavioral health hospital getting my medication straight. I've been sober since that day, July 16th, 2021. I go to AA meetings 2 to 5 times a week and sponsor a few other men. I just want people to know you are not alone. Ask for help. Story 13. I took truffles in Amsterdam at Rembrandt Park. After a few hours of tripping and giggling, I decided to have half a joint, since the guy in the truffle shop said it was fine to mix the two. I took 2 drags of the joint and immediately fell into what felt like the sunken place from the movie Get Out. I blacked out and woke up 3 hours later in the hotel. I had no idea how I got there. Story 14. I took an edible I bought in Vegas. It was only 25 milligrams for the entire piece of candy. I ate it right before checking in for my flight, and it started hitting me at the gate. I felt like I was going to die the entire flight. I couldn't stop shaking and was trying not to vomit. It was a red-eye flight, so the lack of sleep didn't help. I got home around 7 a.m. on a Saturday and didn't get out of bed until Sunday night for dinner. I do not recommend trying this. Story 15. I used to take acid all the time as a teenager for years. I loved every second of it and never felt like there was a bad time to do it, no matter what I was going through. Over time, I got used to taking more and more at once. During the pandemic, I bought 2 tabs. I took the second one when the first one was peaking. I was also smoking blunts and taking dabs while coming up. I must have bought some really good stuff because I had my first and only bad trip. I couldn't feel the sensation of swallowing. It just felt like nothing was happening when I tried to swallow, and it became harder and harder to do that nothing. I freaked out and spent hours pacing my room and laying on the floor, trying to think about anything else. I swallowed hundreds of times, hoping to feel a normal sensation, but it only got worse until I blacked out from panic and stress. I woke up many hours later. Acid usually doesn't allow you to sleep, so the feeling of being unconscious while on acid was hell. The sensation of swallowing never fully returned. Even 5 years later, it still feels different from what I've known my whole life. I saw doctors, ENTs, and vocal therapists for almost 2 years before I gave up, accepting that I'd somehow injured my throat muscles beyond repair during that trip. It gave me severe anxiety about my neck being touched, and I developed a phobia of throat-related injuries, which I never had before. It also made swallowing extremely difficult when I'm anxious or stressed. I miss acid dearly. I've only done one small microdose since, but it was too anxiety-inducing to enjoy. I had to take small pieces of Xanax to prevent myself from freaking out. I wish I could have gone my whole life enjoying it, because some of the best experiences of my life were on acid. I guess I flew too close to the sun. If you like stories like these, please make sure to like and subscribe for more. If you have any opinions on these stories, let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed today's story time, and I hope to hear from you all soon.